Welcome to this episode of Why Pals Tales from the Superyacht Laundry. I'm here with Kayleigh Westgarth. See, I said it right. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hi, thank you. Nice.
So I'm just going to, for listeners, I'm actually going to point out that Kayleigh's like in love. She's grinning from ear to ear, but she's massively distracted because she's got herself a fur baby.
I did, yeah.
And a cat is taking up all of her attention. You literally zoned out. Oh dear. So the things we do to get out of the yachting industry, but it just makes me smile. You're just like, oh, I've got a cat.
Yeah.
So, Kayleigh, we've known each other for a little while now. We just went to Mets. We were at Mets at the same time. You are, or have, still are, a spa stew. Can you say spa stew, or do you not like?
I think so. I mean, I always used to call myself, spa stewardess.
But we'll get into why you want to drop the stew bit, I imagine, a bit later on. But yes, you are a spa stew, but you're also heading up a company, Coral Consultants. Is that
yes,
correct?
Coral Spa Consultants.
Yeah. So yes, I've not had a spa stew on the podcast before. I'm very excited about this. Just wondering how many great stories you got, probably. That would be quite interesting. A couple. But obviously we have to start at the beginning. So what was Kayleigh doing before you found Superyachts?
I got quite lucky. I left college, so I knew what I wanted to do from the get-go. In regards to massage and beauty. So I went straight to college to do that. And then whilst I was in college, we had a visit from Steiner, which is the spas on cruise ships. So I actually joined cruise ships at 18. So started out in the marine industry, maritime industry, but obviously just in a different area of it.
Cruise ships is quite intense, eh? They're like you work for your your money. Like they're quite long shifts, like a bit relentless. Is that correct?
Yeah, and if you're not especially in the massage and in the spa, if you're not working, you're not earning any money because it's all commission based.
What? Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was 18. I was fresh out of school, had no idea what I was doing, and did a 9-month contract on board a Royal Caribbean boat and was doing kind of 8 to 10 hours of back-to-back massage a day because I was on a massage column, which at that age and kind of without knowing what I know now about looking after my body was a lot, but definitely kind of put me in the headspace of kind of travel and exploring and all that side of things, and set me up really well actually for the rest of my career. So as much as I have a lot of complaints as to how cruise ships are run in the spa, it definitely did give me a lot of life lessons and kind of started me off really well. And I probably wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for that.
I think there's an awful lot of value into working that intensely, especially with, because I see massage and beauty as a trade. Yeah. So you need, in the early days, you need that intensity and that relentlessness to keep repeat. So you get better and better and better. But obviously, physically wear and tear on your back.
If you're not looking after yourself,
you know. How did you, what were your, obviously when you got the job on board, was it just all excitement or were you a bit nervous? Were you a traveller by heart?
Pardon?
Were you a traveller by heart? Were you always wanted to travel?
I honestly I don't think I'd really thought about it until I'll always be grateful for them coming to our college to do a talk because none of my family travel. I have a very kind of other than I have an uncle and auntie that travel, but other than that, my dad doesn't like flying. My mum, like, I think she stepped on a plane for the first time in her 40s. I'm kind of the black sheep of the family. I'm the only one that really does it. So
black cat.
It wasn't. So it wasn't something I really learned about myself until I joined cruise ships and got over the initial terror of it. Because I was the youngest crew member on board of like out of 1,000 odd people at the time.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's quite a lot. It's quite an extent. I've got a stepson that did the cruise ship, so I've heard the tales of what kind of goes on, but they do get their money's worth out of you, kind of thing, with the shift patterns and whatnot. So you did the cruise ships. What happened next?
Cruise ships. I then came home for a bit. I did spas at home. I worked for. I live in kind of South Wales, Forest of Dean area. So I actually started working for a spa called the Celtic Manor. It's like a golf resort. And I actually worked there during the 2010 Ryder Cup, which was quite cool. And then I did some ski seasons doing massage. And then I got contacted by, she since found out she was the wife of a captain and she's amazing. She's kind of does a lot of bits and pieces for the industry, but she reached out and was like, would you like to interview for this role? We found your CV on a spa website. And I went to London for an interview, had no idea what I was interviewing for, and somehow got the job for a new build, kind of 80-meter new build as a spa stew. And they paid for my ENG1, my STCW. Wow. Yeah. So I kind of just stepped in and kind of turned up and was like, oh, that's a yacht.
That's really, because like I said to you before, like I mentioned before, I do see it as a trade. So, being able to do massage and beauty and stuff like that, you have got the option to travel around the world. I mean, being a hairdresser used to be able to get you residency in Australia.
That's mad. Yeah.
Back in the day when I travelled to Australia, one of the things that they needed desperately is obviously everybody had mullets and they needed to rectify it. So you could be a hairdresser and immigrate to Australia. Like that got you enough points. I'm like, that's bonkers. But your cat's chirping up. So obviously you kind of, would you say the places that you worked were like the same kind of clientele as a yacht? You kind of ended up working in kind of the higher end hotels.
I'd say sometimes the Celtic Manor, it's a bit of both. When the Ryder Cup was on, yes, kind of quite a few kind of famous people and obviously golfers and all of that sort of thing. But then it was also kind of a mixture of just your normal day-to-day people coming for a spa day. And then ski seasons, no, I worked for a company called Mark Warner. It was not fancy at all. But it was a cool experience. And then yachting. And then, so it was kind of, I fell into it and then just kind of stuck with it really. I did a few bits and pieces kind of in between seasons. I worked for a couple of families, some athletes and things kind of in between my yachting stints. But as a whole, I was in yachting for kind of 12 years and stayed there. And just did a bunch of courses.
With your qualifications, the massage, do you do sports massage?
Yeah.
All of it, because there are a number of different types of massage.
Yeah.
Never been keen on the old stone one myself.
Really? See, when done well, it's really nice.
Yeah, it's that I suppose that resistance and pressure at the right time.
Yes, definitely. And I think a lot of people just glide over and don't use them properly, whereas if you actually get into the muscles with them, they're really good. But I kind of went down the more kind of clinical sports route. I was lucky enough to work for kind of a very high profile tennis player, and at that time was working with his physio a lot. So kind of, I've just had some really great opportunities to learn from other people as well, which is just, and even on board, because I've been on quite a few bigger boats, learning from other spa stews on board. Even when I was kind of spa manager, there's always someone to learn from, which has been really nice.
It's really good for anybody who's considering it, or if you're listening to this. It's good. I myself have done a massage course, but we've talked about this before. I really enjoyed the course and, got the qualification, but then I just didn't, I cope well with, you couldn't pick who you massaged.
Yeah, I think you kind of get a little bit numb to it eventually. It's kind of just body is a body, and you see it as the kind of the interesting side of it that it is, in all shapes and forms. I think I've never been particularly worried about nudity or this, that, like that. So, which I think helps me. I'm very glad.
Being on a cruise ship and having that, like, they just come through the door like a conveyor belt. I understand you got numb to it, but maybe I should have gone on to a cruise ship afterwards to get numb to it, because I just couldn't. Obviously, coming out of yachting as well, like, to get the first 3 that haven't washed properly, and I'm just like, I can't do it. So my life, it was a very short lifespan.
I've massaged a few chefs kind of in downtime when I'm doing the crew, and I'm just like, please go wash the food off of you, like the food smell first before you come back.
The lingering, the fat smell that just won't go away from their clothes or their hair.
Yeah.
So obviously, what can you think back when you joined, like, the super yacht? What were your first impressions of it? Because obviously you can do the spa stuff. What about the stew stuff? Like, what you were being asked to do?
I was useless, in all honesty. I won't lie. It was not something that came naturally to me. It was not something that came naturally to me at all. I did not grow up a tidy person, organized person. I definitely had to learn all of that side. I remember doing the captain's cabin for the first time, and the chief stew coming in and just being like, did you do anything? But we got there eventually. And I think I like to think I have quite a good work ethic. And once I got the hang of it and realized what was expected, I just wanted to be the best that I could be. I also don't like making work for other people, which I think kind of saved me a bit, because it was going to take me longer, I wanted to make sure I was doing it properly, and I wanted to be told if I'd done it wrong, so that I could be better and that no one was having to go around fixing things. I think there's nothing worse than having a crew member that doesn't really care and is just doing it, and then someone else has to go up and tidy behind them. I think that creates work for people that are meant to be your teammates, and that's not fair.
Well, that's the fastest way to a team. That's probably not like, that's probably where the bullying or, the friction starts to come. Most crews are understaffed. You're undercrewed most of the time. Yeah. If someone's not pulling their weight, people will help for a bit. Yeah. But if you're not pulling your weight all the time, it can descend into angst.
Everyone has bad days. Like, we've all had a hungover day where you just want to hide behind a cupboard and not do anything.
In the laundry. I just want to be in the laundry.
Yeah, where you have other people's backs and you look after, but I think relying on that is not fair. So I think that kind of, so eventually we got there. I think by the time after my first boat and kind of then stepping onto, which was quite quiet, and then stepping onto a busier boat, I kind of got thrown in the deep end and had a terrifying French chief stew who, as terrifying as she was, I learned so much from. And obviously then you just kind of go build from there, really.
Yeah, it's quite, I had one chief stew, I won't name her, but she taught me how to be a stew properly. Yeah. I hated every minute of it. It's when you've got that message on the radio, can you come back to the master cabin? Because she'd done a check, and what have I missed? And then it was like, Well, if you get down on your knees on the floor and you look at that mirror from a different angle, it's got a massive smudge. I'm like, what? Why is anybody on their knees?
The really fun one that I used to quite often get was a call for me on someone else's radio, which was the moment where I realised that I'd left my radio in the guest cabin.
Done that before.
And it had just been found by a guest. So
somebody's left a cleaning caddy behind or a rag. Oh, always something to forget.
Yeah.
So obviously having your cruise ship experience, you would have thought it was a holiday on a yacht, no? Did it feel
it was just different. Yeah, different, because I think you were still working just as long hours. I think obviously the difference was I wasn't doing as much massage. I think I'd almost lost my love for massage on cruise ships because like you pointed out, it's a conveyor belt. So joining yachts kind of really saved me in that respect, because it made me look forward to doing treatments, because it took me out of cleaning for an hour or two. So it really kind of brought that love back, and has made the world of difference over the years, and finding different kind of modalities of massage to go into, and obviously learning better ways to look after my body and treat better, so that I could kind of do it for longer with less injuries likely to happen.
So obviously we've talked a lot about massage, but do you do all of it?
I do. Yeah, I'm a yoga instructor as well, but predominantly massage and beauty. So kind of facials, manicures, pedicures. I do everything. Everything
but hair.
Yes, I do not do hair. Well,
you've got to. So because obviously when you are in part of the interior, you interact with the guests quite a bit, but obviously as a spa studio, it's a little bit more intimate, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Had any weirdos, or is everybody who charters a yacht just lovely?
I've been very lucky, I think. I've always had very, very nice guests. You get the ones that just kind of walk in, strip off, jump on the bed, and they don't speak to you. So you're like, okay, I'll just guess. We'll figure this out together. You get the ones that are kind of they know exactly what they want, and they have zero interest in changing from that set kind of routine that they're used to, again, which is fine. You just adapt. I've had a lot of very, very hygiene conscious guests. I once had to spray myself in Dettol because she saw me pick up a towel prior to her treatment.
What, like head to toe?
Well, it was pretty much, she told me to go wash myself in Dettol, so we kind of went into another room and just did a couple of spritzes to make it look like so I smelt of Dettol. So I wore perfume.
What did you touch? Who had the other towel?
Literally, I was helping the housekeeping team. I picked up her towel for them to give to them, and she saw me do it before her massage. And
what does she think of the other guests? Jesus, don't.
You've
touched her towel. I know what she's got.
It was her own towel. So this was the other side of
it. That's quite mad. It's quite. You had lots of odd requests.
Yeah. Not some. I think the ones I dislike the most were what kind of when you get asked to massage in weird places. Like I've had to sit under the main deck aft table and massage someone's feet before, whilst he played backgammon for thousands and thousands of pounds, and I'm sat there under the table just massaging feet on the teak, like.
Is he just trying to put off the other player?
Yeah. Reaching over a cinema chair, which was always really uncomfortable as well. But no, I think I've been very lucky. I remember I had a guest, he was a DJ or an artist, but he basically told me that his neck was really sore because his gold chain was so heavy that he needed some work done on his neck. Which I always just found the most obnoxious thing I've ever heard.
This gold chain's just so, I just got,
Yeah,
take it off, you weirdo.
Yeah.
Were you supposed to be impressed by that? Was that what he was?
Really don't know. Yeah.
A man that wears a gold chain is interesting.
I believe
anyway, let alone one that's heavy enough to give you neck complaints. Oh, you've got to love guests. They are interesting, aren't they?
But no, as a whole, I've had some really amazing guests. Some of the families I've worked with have just been so kind. I think it definitely has always outweighed the occasional strange person you've had. Yeah, I think my stories are a bit boring, really, because I've actually been really, really lucky.
Well, it's not that they're boring, because there is, like we said before, it's a fab industry. You can have a great time. You really can. And I think sometimes, obviously, what I do most of the time when you highlight some of the risks and dangers and stuff like that, I think it's just most of the time it's all good.
Yeah.
But I think there is, because of the nature of the job, if it goes wrong, it generally goes wrong in quite a big way. There's no it's a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
It's all good or it's spectacularly bad. Obviously, we're about supporting women. From your perspective, obviously, as a spa stew, obviously in these environments where, it is more intimate, would you say that boats, how do you command respect from guests? I suppose that's the way. Do you need support? Does it need to be the tone of the boat before you even take the job on the boat? Because obviously I imagine there's spa stews out there that have worked on boats and been requested all sorts of interesting things.
Of course. I think to a certain degree, I've had kind of an air of no nonsense about me when it comes to doing massage. So I think that's probably helped in my respect. Even when I was younger, I think I've kind of, if there's been a moment where I'm like, oh, do I feel uncomfortable? I've always been quite good at shutting it down quite quickly. And I think that also very much helped as I progressed through my career. Obviously, I ended up as spa manager. So towards kind of the last 5-6 years of my career on board, I was in that role. So I had girls to look after. I had a team that, yes, they were doing housekeeping as well, but when they were in the spa, I was responsible for them and their safety. And I've always been, I think by that point, I was not very good. I did not take nonsense very well. So I was very upfront with my guests of, yes, you can have this treatment now, but if you're happy to wait 15 minutes, I would like so-and-so to go and have some lunch first, because then she's going to be more alert for her treatment. And it's going to be a nicer treatment for you. And I think sometimes we dance around guests and we give them exactly what they want straight away and to the detriment of your crew. Whereas sometimes if you're just honest and, yes, we can absolutely do this treatment for you, but are you happy to sit and have a cup of tea in the relax lounge for 15 minutes whilst we make sure that the room is ready for you, the therapist is ready, so that they can really give you their all? Because the minute a therapist is not giving you all of their attention is the minute you can feel it. If a therapist isn't paying attention and they're maybe kind of one hand on thinking about what they're going to have for lunch, your treatment's not going to be as good. Or you're going to hear their tummy rumbling. So it's, I think,
setting the tone as you start. And also, guests are human.
Exactly.
So, who's going to say, no, I don't want her to eat. I want her to start now.
Yeah, and I think that was something I really tried to kind of implement in the spa, was that, yes, we can absolutely do this and we want to give you the best service possible. And we can do that if you're just happy to wait 10 minutes for us. And I think that kind of, it allowed the girls to kind of feel a bit more comfortable in knowing that kind of, and if they weren't comfortable, then I would step in and be like, if you're not comfortable doing this, I will do it. Like, I would rather that than you feel in that position at any point. But yeah.
Have you ever been offered any kind of, you're like, that job sounds dodge?
No, once I'd say. But even then it was kind of very quickly, do you know what? I'm going to step away from this. It was more just because the guests they kind of pointed out that the guests like to kind of have treatments at all times and in their cabins and all these sorts of things. And I'm like, on a massage bed in their cabin? They're like, no, just in bed. I'm like, do you know what? Like, I know that having your feet massaged at the end of the day, like before, as you go to sleep, sounds lovely, but I'm not in that place that I want to accept this role. And like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be doing this properly. So, and I think I was spoiled in that I had the ability to feel comfortable saying no, but, and the experience behind me that I was happy to say no to those things.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were quite confident in yourself at the get-go, and what being a masseuse and spa, you're confident in your trade, and then that kind of carried on, that professionalism carried on board.
I think so.
Could you highlight what were a couple of your highs in the industry, and what would you say was like kind of pinch yourself, like, is this actually happening kind of moment?
I did the build of Cloudbreak back in 2016, I think. During that, when we did the first kind of season, once we launched, we got to do Iceland and Greenland, and kind of all those very cool places, which I'd never imagined kind of seeing or doing before. And especially Greenland was very cool because we got the opportunity to take a helicopter to set up lunch on an iceberg, essentially, for the guests, which was just incredible. And kind of just in general, doing treatments throughout that kind of period was, you'd kind of look out the porthole in the massage room and it was just incredible. I also did a lot of freelance stuff for Plus Ultra, and the family that owned Plus Ultra at the time were just one of the most amazing families I've ever met. And the crew as well were just incredible. But we also got to do Alaska. And the family would kind of rotate through taking a crew or a couple of crew members out on their day trips. So got to see some really, really cool places. So I think kind of things like that were definitely up there. And just getting to know some really amazing kind of guests that were repeat clients, especially when I was on Fox, because I was there for 4 and a bit years. So I think, which meant that we had some kind of multi guests that would come back. We had charter guests that came back a few times and got to know the madame. She would come in and see me for 2 hours every day, and you end up just building a rapport with some of these people.
2 hours every day. Oh my God.
Yeah, she had her anti-aging facial treatment and her anti-cellulite treatment every day.
Did it actually work? Like 2 hours every day for like 3 weeks or whatever it is? That's an intense.
I think for her it was more the connection. And she was one of the most wonderful ladies I've ever met. She was truly fantastic. I think she was a bit older, and she would kind of spend those 2 hours chatting and confiding to me. And I think she just wanted someone to talk to, really. And it was just really lovely. And it was her that used to kind of, at the end of every trip, would buy all the crew gifts, and she'd go out and handpick these things that she thought would suit. Yeah, it was just, you just meet some really lovely people. I think everyone likes to focus on kind of those horror stories and the horror guests, and then into kind of dropped in between those, there's always these really beautiful people that you get the opportunity to meet. And that was kind of always some of my highlights, especially when they kind of they're like, we trust you, create us a treatment program, and that's what we're going to do these next couple of weeks.
Well, I trust you. You can create a program for me. I'll come spend 3 or 4 weeks. You can work on this if you like, for as many hours a day as you want. It is, it is true. You do, they're just people at the end of the day, and you get really nice ones, and some not. But it's more, like you said, it's more positive. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep doing it. So why would you bother if it wasn't nice? So, did you have any struggles or lows that you remember? What you've challenges?
Yeah, I think definitely over the years there was a point where it would have been about 2015-ish. I was on a boat that I really wasn't enjoying. Sorry. I was on a boat that I really, really wasn't enjoying. I didn't gel with the crew. I think it comes with the nature of the job. I'm quite a touchy-feely person. I react very well to kind of hugs and daily kind of tactileness, I guess. And it wasn't a crew that was particularly like that. And I didn't connect with anyone. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I kind of thought that it was me kind of done with yachting. So I actually ended up I left. I did a season on there and handed in my notice, went and lived in Costa Rica for the winter, because I just needed a break to kind of reset and remind myself why I was doing it, and if I even wanted to kind of still be doing it.
Why Costa Rica? Don't get me wrong, it sounds lovely.
Yeah, I went and did massage. I worked at a retreat centre for the winter for about 5 months.
Wow.
Worked at a retreat centre, and did massage and taught yoga and just watched sunsets and was up for something. It was just the reset I needed to kind of remind me what I enjoyed about my job. Because it was a boat that I really, really wasn't happy on. And I think, oh God, is she going to climb that curtain?
No, she's just having a look. We'll keep it in if she does. That'll be one of the outtakes of this podcast, if she does decide she's climbing the curtain.
But yeah.
What was, obviously you took a job at a retreat for kind of a break. That doesn't sound like a break because you're still working. But what is the stark difference between working on board and then?
Because when I say working, it was a retreat centre that I had been to a few years before, had made friends with the owners, and they basically said, if you're ever here again, we'd obviously love to have you, So when I realised that, I was like, I'm just not in a good place. I realized that I was getting into some like toxic habits that I think quite often happens in yachting when you're not happy. You either drink more than you're used to, or all these different things. You kind of, and I think when you're not happy, obviously in a close crew, or when it's a smaller crew, it's very obvious, and it's hard on other people as well. So I took myself out of the environment. But yes, I was maybe doing 2 or 3 massages a day. I went with savings so that I didn't have to. I was working because I wanted to be working. I was doing massages I was doing massages on an outdoor pavilion in the jungle with howler monkeys around me, and I mean, I just don't see that's working. I just happened to get some money at the end of it.
It sounds like that it really is your passion, like you said, you knew from the start, and they always say that the trick is that it doesn't feel like work.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds horrendous. Like, I don't, where's the retreat? Send me the address.
Honestly, like literally.
See whether Tim will let me go.
Massaging these beautiful yogis, like it was.
It sounds.
There was a few like Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
We'll put the address to the retreat in the bio of the podcast, ladies. Obviously, if you needed a break.
It was really. Do you know what? It was a really hard time for me.
Yeah, tough. It sounds like you were slogging it out, you know. I feel very, very sympathetic for you. Can you remember a moment on board where you were like, I'm going to start thinking about leaving?
Yes, absolutely. It was actually before COVID, kind of about 6 months, like that kind of 2019. I'd started kind of preparing myself that, right, this is my last year. I'm going to spend this year saving. I'm going to be doing charters because I was on 2-2. So I was like, right, I'm going to be doing charters on my off time. Everything that I kind of earn is going to go into savings, and I'm going to start building these plans because I already knew that I wanted to do spa consulting. So I started thinking about a logo and what that was going to entail, like who I needed to reach out to.
Is that because of doing spas on new builds? So you're like, that's,
yeah,
obviously you enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was noticing the same recurring problems each boat I joined. And it just felt like, even on Fox, I joined very, very early in the build. And even with that, there was still stuff that I wasn't able to kind of talk to them about because it was, oh no, the drawing's done. This is done now. We just have to find a way around it. And I just think for the money that they're spending and the level of service that they're expecting, the sentence, we'll just have to make do, shouldn't happen.
Not if you're spending that much money. You might as well get it right from the start.
It happens in the spa a lot. It's just you kind of walk in and you're like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. We'll make do. And I don't think that really gels with what the guests want to kind of.
I am baffled. You know, obviously you were at Mets and I was, and when there's lots of people talking about builds and stuff like that, I don't understand how there are boats that are being built now that have the same problems that people talk about. You know, like you've got to try and make it as easy as possible for the people that are providing the service. Yeah. You know, and then if that means a bit more of a crew mess or cabin space, or in the spa or in, you know, storage in the LAS, or, you know, one of the classic boats that I worked on, they didn't put a full-size fridge in the bar on the sky deck. They put an aviation fridge. You can't even fit one bottle of wine in there. Like, are you on acid? Like, what are you doing?
It's like when they don't include ice machines on each deck.
Oh, on that same one, manual filled ice machine. Brilliant idea. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. You know, it gives out 5 ice cubes because it's so small, but to get 5, you've got to fill it up. Like, honestly, you know, the Sky Lounge looked lovely. Yeah. But it was the most impractical, useless space on the boat. So do you think that's changing a little bit with building now? Absolutely. You're starting this, you know. Yeah,
and I think it's throughout, because I think the interior is, and specialist areas in general, whether it's the galley, the interior, the spa area, water sports, I think they're getting better at hiring people that know those spaces, because they're all spaces that it's a service, and the people working in those spaces, if we're doing a good job, they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And that is, I think that is the sign of a good, whether it's a good chef or a good spa therapist or water sports, it just flows. They need something that's there.
Well, like what you said, though, if it's not a comfortable space for a spa individual to work in, the guests will feel that, because you'll be stressed out and annoyed. You know, it's not going to work.
It's opening, or all these little things. And I think they're getting better at chatting to us about these things. And I think it's why Coral Spa Consultants has been quite well received. We've done actually quite a number of, I've done quite a number of talks at kind of some of the big interior design companies, just doing a presentation on, hey, your space is beautiful, it's incredible. I just want to make it as operationally friendly as possible so that you're getting the best out of this space, rather than yes, it looks amazing, but hang on a second, I can't actually do this because this isn't, XYZ isn't here. And I think the fact that I definitely don't want to kind of diminish what they've done, or I don't want to have zero interest in designing a spa. I'm useless at that. I'll leave that to the experts. But from an operational point of view, that is where I'm very good. And what I want to make sure that any spa therapist that's stepping into that boat then, as it's ready to be launched, all they have to think about is making sure their treatments work. They know that the space is there and they have these little bits and pieces that make the difference.
So tell me, so you're on board, you're thinking of a logo. What was the journey from I've got a logo? What did you do? Did you start making connections ashore?
Yeah, COVID kind of got in the way, so it kind of delayed it by a couple of years. I ended up staying in yachting until the beginning of 2022 in the end, which was kind of a year-ish later than planned. But I basically started reaching out to kind of old projects I'd worked with, kind of going through my kind of contacts and just making a list of, okay, these are people I can look at contacting once I have a business plan in place. Who can I kind of maybe say, like chief stews, that I was kind of thinking small, I think, at that point. And just being like, okay, I can do freelance in the interim whilst this is kind of getting up and running. But I can also maybe, I think the first year, myself and an old crew member, a friend of mine, we went to Monaco Yacht Show and we just kind of went around and just tried to introduce ourselves to people and explaining what we do and what I do and all these sorts of things. With not much luck at first, in all honesty.
It's a difficult industry to crack at the very best. You know, it is challenging. You've got to have the right connections. And also, you know, like anything in life, you've got to kind of prove yourself in a way, you know, like you're not just a spa stew anymore. You've got more input to give. Yeah.
I'm not a natural entrepreneur either. Like that sort of thing doesn't come easy to me. I think the best thing I ever did was reaching out to Ed at Jim Marine.
Love Ed.
Yeah, and he really took a chance on me, I think. And obviously it's worked out really well, and he was able to introduce me to a lot of contacts, and we kind of obviously developed it into Coral Spa together. And I think the good thing is that essentially it is very much the same service as Jim Marine.
Well, they're linked, aren't they? You know, most gyms have a spa. So, you know, the marriage made in heaven, it makes practical sense. The one supports the other. You do a tough workout and then you take on into the spa.
Yeah. So it worked really well. And I think within the first 6 months, I was doing a 100-odd meter, I think 110 meter new build with him that we did the whole spa setup for, which was just incredible. And obviously, because of his connections, I've been able to speak to a lot of the interior designers, and that's kind of where we are able to make the most difference. We work from different stages of the build. We sometimes work very early. Sometimes we only get involved when it comes to the crew. And obviously in those situations, it's more kind of small equipment and the product recommendations and kind of giving suggestions to the chief stew as to, okay, you haven't hired a spa therapist yet, but this is what could work in this space. This is the list of things that I would suggest you need. Once the spa therapist is on board, feel free to reach out again and we can kind of tweak it. But it gives you a starting point. So the chief stew who has 10 million other things on their mind, where we're taking one of those things off of them so that they can concentrate on the rest. And then with the interior designers, we can actually look at the floor plans. We'll look at the GAs and, okay, have you thought about how much space you actually have around this bed? you want to be able to offer all of these treatments in here, so why not think about a multifunctional bed? Or just these things that when you look at them early enough and you can think about the plumbing and the placement and the fact that certain things have 12-week lead times, and the spa therapist isn't arriving on board and then having to order things from Amazon and then hiding them every time the interior designer comes on board.
So obviously you've, what is it, 2 years now, Carl Spa?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It'll be 2 years in April.
2 years in April. Obviously, there's lots of ladies out there that have got an idea. They might even have a logo right now. And they're like, oh, maybe I could do this. Looking back on this last 2 years, what would you say they perhaps need to think about that you didn't pan out the way you thought?
My biggest regret's the wrong word, but my biggest thing I wish I'd kind of been more on top of at the beginning is the contacts. For instance, I was in Lursen on a build for almost 2 years and met so many people that kind of would have been great to be able to contact later on down the line. It would have been remembering to not just kind of chat on a day-to-day basis and enjoy a drink if you saw them in the pub later, but actually kind of be like, oh, actually, I'd love to get your contacts for later on down the line, just in case, because these people that you make friends with in that moment, but, it's just kind of
remembering people's names is horrible.
Yeah.
When you're walking around Monaco, you're like, hi, I do know you. Not really sure where.
Yeah, it's kind of thinking about, even if you don't think that, even if they might not come in handy later on down the line, it's kind of keeping those connections going. I kind of wish that I'd not been so slow. I guess obviously I wasn't in that mindset back then, but I wish I'd had the wherewithal to kind of think, okay, wait, hang on a second. This person deals with a lot of new builds at this shipyard. I already really enjoy chatting to them. Let's just make sure we keep a note of this for later on down the line. You never know.
No, connection is a big thing in the industry. You've got to be connected to the right individuals.
Yeah.
Go to the right events. That kind of stuff. Obviously, you're at the forefront of kind of maybe, what would you say, a change in the spa side of most new builds want a spa.
Yes. Considering when I joined yachting, it was a room with a massage bed in at best, kind of tucked in a corner because they'd had a spare space. The fact that now boats have cryo saunas on them and hammams, and it's a whole wellness environment, a whole wellness deck, is just incredible. I think there's been such a change in how people view yachting, because especially since COVID, they don't just come on for a holiday now. So many more people are coming on and they're either living on them, or they're coming on and they still want to be able to do their general routine. They want to be able to kind of work out in the morning, have their afternoon massage or their afternoon steam.
Well, that's the change in the world, It's that whole, you could be a floating office, technically, but it's a floating house instead.
Exactly.
Floating mansion on the water. So you want all your comforts at the same time.
And I think that's made such a difference. And it's the biggest thing that we've kind of spoken to clients about is making sure that space flows. So it's kind of looking at it from a kind of more holistic approach and taking into consideration that client's specific preferences. Maybe they're the sort of person that goes for a sea swim every morning. If that's the case, do you want to then make sure that the walkway then goes straight so that they can jump in the sauna or the steam after that? Or you have a shower nearby, and all these little things that you can really tailor it to suit the client. And I think this is what we're seeing more of now, is people really thinking about those spaces and how they're going to use it. And then it's, okay, then I can come in and be like, okay, if that's what you want to use that for, this is a great idea, or this works well in that kind of space, etc. Or if you want a cryo sauna, let's not maybe put it next to the water area, because otherwise you're gonna get frostnip.
That's so funny. So Coral Spa, what's the plan? Like in the next 5 years, where are you? What's happening?
Hopefully doing lots more new builds. I think that's obviously an element I really enjoy. We also obviously do kind of supply products as well. So I'd like to kind of be working with more kind of, as well as working with the yard and the interior designers. I really love the projects that then we end up working with the chief stew and kind of the interior team and helping kind of decide on like their product ranges and, you know, kind of getting them samples sent out and that sort of thing. And I'd love to be doing more of that so that it's kind of like we're helping with the whole process and you kind of see the end result, which is really nice. We're also talking with Paragon Studio about potentially kind of creating a portable massage bed, because one of the big things we've found is that all the manufacturers we work with, it comes in one standard finish. It's whatever the wood is and whatever their upholstery is, and that's it. It's ready-made, which is great because it means they're ready very quickly. But so many of the interior designers, they want it that certain shade of cream, or that so I think,
like, yes, we can, but it's going to cost you.
Exactly. So we're looking at potentially seeing how feasible that would. I think that would be a pipe dream for me, to be able to come out with something like that and a massage bed that's comfortable and also looks beautiful and all these sorts of things. But that's a long way down the line. For now, I'm just really enjoying it. I obviously do the occasional hands-on bits and pieces here and there, which I really love too. But yeah, just kind of growing. And obviously Ed from Gym Marine, Ed is, I mean, he's incredible. He's an incredible businessman and incredible entrepreneur. And I think it's just a matter of learning from him, really. And just, yeah, I mean, I feel very grateful that I have the support of him and the team who are also just as great. So I think I landed on my feet, which is
the only way is up. The only way is up. It's very, very exciting. Yeah. Okay, so to finish up, I obviously ask each guest 3 pieces of advice, you know, whether you're talking to 20-year-old Kayleigh back in the day or, what would you, to aspiring spa stew or one that's already there, what would your 3 bits of advice be?
The first one would be just kind of crew in general would be, I joined yachting when I was about 20 and had no idea about kind of money and being safe with money. So it would definitely be, you know, just put aside a little bit every month. Just, I wish I had done that. But that would just be kind of a general one. From a spa side of things, it would be taking the opportunities to do as much training as possible. I think obviously focusing on the bits that you enjoy and want to learn, but I think all it does is make your CV look better. I think part of the reason I got quite lucky with positions was because I did have multiple things that I was trained in. And I think that obviously kind of, it makes you more desirable as an employee on boats. And finally, I think take the time to look after your own body would be, I think when I didn't work out at all when I first started in yachting. I didn't even own a pair of trainers until I was about 26. But I think that I noticed a considerable difference in my kind of health and mental well-being when I started kind of just taking, even if it was just doing a 30-minute something or other that someone had written for me on my break, or kind of whether it's yoga or workout, but just looking after yourself and your posture. And that as a spa therapist, even just as a housekeeping when you're making beds, I think it keeps you healthier in the long run. And the earlier you start that, the better. I think that would be my final thing.
Sound advice. And if you're on a boat that's got a crew gym, you've got no excuse really, have you?
No. And even if you don't have a crew gym, even if it's just taking 10 minutes on your break to do some stretches, I think, as much as I definitely struggle to remind myself of that sometimes, I know when I do it, I feel better.
Good. Okay, so we're finishing up. Can you divulge us a crazy story from your time on board?
Oh God, my mind's gone blank now.
We've had all sorts. We've had Rogue, obviously the first one, which was Emma Ross's Rogue dildo that just went walkies. That was quite funny. Somebody else got shot at because they didn't buy a bar tab. It can be anything, anything you want.
I think one that always sticks with me was actually the same lady that made me spray myself in Dettol. We learned that she did not like stewardesses in the cabin when she was in there. So if you were in there cleaning and you heard she was coming, you got out of there as quick as possible. We were in this particular boat in the bathroom. We had an emergency escape exit, kind of like hatch in the wall in the bathroom that then led through all the engineering spaces and kind of popped you out in the crew mess. We basically didn't realize she'd come back, heard her in the bedroom, and me and the other girl that I was working with kind of really quickly grabbed all our stuff, climbed through the emergency exit, and we're there crawling through the engineering spaces and just popped out with all of our stuff just being like, no one warned us to run away from this guest.
That's a bit extreme to make sure that the guest is happy to go through, because those spaces are quite small. You'd be like...
Yeah. We were like, just so you know, we've done the safety checks for that particular hatch this month.
That's
them, they work.
The things we do to keep guests happy. It's just mad. It's just mad. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I've really enjoyed it. And it is incredible. You're kind of like another pioneer in a way, adapting to creating a business when in these changing times, things are changing, lifestyles changing. And what you've created so far is pretty amazing. And now you've got your fur baby, so you can't go away as much.
I know. It's definitely stopped being tempted to go back to yachting.
It's going to make it more difficult. It will make it more difficult. So no, I really, I admire what you've done, and I'm sure it will go from strength to strength. It's really quite incredible. We are going to finish up now. So if you're listening to this podcast, contact details for Kayleigh and Coral Spa Consultants will be in the bio. Obviously, feel free to reach out to her if you're on board at the moment and you've got crazy guests that want spa advice. If you like this episode, we've got more recorded, more on the horizon. So please join us again. But until the next time, see you later.
Bye. Ta-da! Thank you so much, Cherise.
Thank you.